Welcome to a new program here at Villages United Church and our rural ministries. This is going to be kind of an off-the-cuff interview with our special guest today, and we're hoping to kind of generate some more interviews as time goes along. But today we got a special topic, martial arts and Christianity. And we're joined by actually my father, Michael Shaw, who is a very interesting man because he's not only a Christian minister, but he's also, I can't remember all the degrees of black belts you have, but he is a martial arts champion, a Canadian champion, and he's been doing martial arts for a very long time. So we're going to kind of introduce him a little bit to start, and then I got some questions, and we'll see where the conversation takes us. So to begin, I'm going to ask you to just tell us a little bit about your martial arts history.
Okay. Began my martial arts back in 1968. I was 12 years old at the time. Our family moved around a fair bit, and so I was always the new kid and got picked on a lot. And I thought it might be a good idea if I learned some self-defense and got some private lessons from a world judo champ, just a couple, and gunfall. My father taught me a little bit of boxing. He had boxed, and he had studied jiu-jitsu at the local YMCA when he was a boy, and he showed me those moves, and I thought, well, I've got to find an instructor now. Like, I got to find some expert. And I got involved in Japanese karate first, and then I saw the Korean stylists who had these high kicks, and I just thought that was so cool. So I wanted to learn how to kick high, and so I switched over to the Korean styles. And this is back when it was still self-defense oriented. Some of the Taekwondo styles have gone a little bit more to the sport area. There's still some old school Taekwondo, but yeah, I studied the old school stuff. Got a black belt in Chang Kwan Taekwondo, and from there got into Hapkido, praying mantis Kung Fu. Went back to some Japanese Jiu-Jitsu, and again, I wanted those high kicks from the Koreans, and so I switched over to Hapkido, which is a Korean form of Jiu-Jitsu, and got a black belt in that as well. And I also did and taught Tai Chi for many years.
Yeah. Well, that's a lot, and I remember growing up, and me and my sister, we would go to the karate clubs and the studios, and sometimes we were in the classes, sometimes we watched the classes, but it was always really neat to see you doing all those techniques. It was never my skill set. I tried for many years. I had a lot of difficulty with it, though I really liked the drunken mantis stuff we did there for a while. That was a lot of fun. So as I said earlier, he's also a Christian minister, and he's done a lot of variety of work in Christian ministry over the years. So why don't you tell the viewers a little bit about that?
Sure. I was, as a boy, I was born and raised in an Anglican / Presbyterian home. My mother was Anglican and my father was Presbyterian. I was christened in the Anglican church, confirmed in the Anglican church. Sadly, I'm one of those people that when I was young, I was sexually assaulted by Anglican clergy and a few other laymen that were with him. I was able to fight them off, but I ended up leaving the church because of that, and got involved in some breakaway Anglican and Catholic churches and joined them. Matter of fact, I was part of one of those churches when I married you and Sarah many years ago. But over the years, I also have sat with the Quakers, and I was part of a Mennonite church for a while. So I sat with 3 different groups of Quakers, plus interacted with Quakers online once I found some of them. And so I have been part of some of those pacifistic peace churches. I was never ordained in those churches, but I certainly know a lot about them. And that gives you a little bit of an idea.
Yeah. Even when we were growing up, me and Erica, we used to go also to the Unitarian Church and the United Church. I remember you doing pulpit supply or doing special programs with different communities, so
Right.
you were well versed. And I would say that's one of the greatest gifts I think I've had through my own kind of spiritual upbringing is when I've gone to theological colleges. People are amazed that I kind of have a wealth of knowledge from different denominations, and I think that was partly because you moved around a little bit and you had a lot of experimentation with your Christian faith. And so I guess the next question, why are we talking about martial arts? What are some of the benefits of martial arts? And then we'll kind of go into how does that mingle with the Christianity. So let's start with what are some benefits of learning martial arts?
Well, the number one benefit, even though most people don't like to admit this when they take martial arts or when they study it, is self-defense. Usually when you ask people when they're signing up, why do you want to study martial arts, they will say, I want to get exercise, I want to get fit. Well, it's usually just a bit of a cover. They don't want to admit that they want to learn to defend themselves. Sometimes it's hard for, especially a male, to come in and say, look, I really don't know how to fight very well. I need to learn how to defend myself. So instead of saying that, they say, well, I need to get in shape. And I would tell them, well, if you really need to get in shape, you should join a gym. You can get in shape doing martial arts for sure, definitely. But I would just kind of play with them. I knew why they were there. That is the number one reason, is self-defense. But yeah, you can get in shape with it, develop great flexibility. I'm a little bit older now, and my flexibility is starting to slide away. My conditioning is sliding away very quickly. But yeah, for people that are young and want to get in, it's a great, and it's fun. There's a sport attitude, there's discipline, self-discipline. It really is a lot of fun, no matter whether you're doing the kick punch stuff like karate or taekwondo, or if you're doing the grappling like hapkido, judo, or jiu-jitsu. It's all fun.
Yeah, yeah. And I remember there's a lot of variety to it, because sometimes you're doing drills and you're kind of one-on-one practicing, and other times you're doing the katas, which is more like a dance practice that kind of teaches you the movements, and then you got the sparring, which is a lot of hands-on and kind of impulse moments, and you're trying to pinpoint the things you've learned in those minutes. So there's a lot of variety in martial arts, which is nice too. I think the big question, I think there are Christians out there, and there are just people in general out there who are pacifists or believe that violence is not the answer, and that is a big part of some of the rhetorics within Christianity. So how, as a Christian minister and a martial arts instructor, have you learned to kind of navigate that barrier?
Sure, that's a great question. To start off with, let's just go back to my background. Like I said, I've sat with Quakers, I've been with Mennonites. When I worked in Elmer, I used to make a lot of deliveries to the old Mennonites and the Amish people. I've had a lot of interaction with the peace movement people. I've had good friends that were Jehovah's Witnesses, and they're also a peace church. So, okay, some of the peace churches are like the Amish, the Mennonites, the Hutterites, and Jehovah's Witness. Those are the more well-known peace churches, but there are other churches that also adhere to pacifism. And to be quite honest with you, I understand where they're coming from, but it's really not in the Bible. A lot of people think that the passage where Jesus talks about turning the other cheek and not resisting evil is some sort of blanket statement about pacifism. But if you look at that whole passage, and I'm not going to analyze it here and take up time for your viewers, but if you really do take your own time and analyze it, you'll see that it's really kind of talking about people we're in conflict with. It's not, and they may be real jerks, and they may want to hit us, right? But it's not talking about Nazis. It's not talking about mass murderers. It's not talking about someone who's really trying to hurt you. And the other passages in the Bible actually tell you that you can kill a burglar who breaks in your house at night. Now, I'm not recommending that. I'm not giving anyone any legal advice here. I'm not giving anyone any moral advice. I mean, you have to deal with the law and, conduct yourself accordingly. Okay, there's no advice coming from me on this, and I'm not saying that passage is right. I'm not a minister that believes the Bible's inerrant and infallible, and so I don't always agree with the passages in Scripture, and that one there, I can understand it maybe in some cases where someone's trying to kill you or your family, but if they're just trying to take some money, I don't think someone should be shooting them. Matter of fact, let's just slip for a minute here into Zen Buddhism. There's a Zen story where the Zen master's getting ready to go to sleep one night, and the burglar crawls through his bedroom window and is rifling through his drawers and finds his pouch of money, and he's starting to leave, and the Zen master says, "Hey, buddy, what are you doing?" He says, "Well, I'm taking your money." He says, "Well, leave me enough to pay my taxes tomorrow. I got to pay my taxes." The guy goes, "Okay." So he puts some money back, right? And so then this guy's starting to leave to go out the window, and the Zen master says, "What? You're not going to thank me for a gift?" You go, "Okay, sorry, yeah, thank you." And so he goes. And sure enough, the next day, the police find this fellow with the Zen master's bag of money. So they arrest him, they take him down to the Zen master, and they tell the Zen master, look, we caught this guy that stole your money last night. And the Zen master says, well, there must be some mistake. I gave him that money. It's a gift. And I kind of like that story. I like to, set that one beside that Old Testament passage that says, go ahead and kill somebody who brings in to burglarize your house. So, anyways, there are passages in the Bible that tell us that we can defend ourselves. And it tells us that to defend the widows and orphans. And it also says that someone's going to be killed to try to defend them. Now, it's kind of hard to defend them if we're going to be pacifists.
Yeah.
And it doesn't mean that we have to disregard the life of the criminal. It doesn't mean we have to disrespect them or have no care for their dignity. Different criminals, there's different levels. There's the psychopathic killers who care nothing about anybody, and you might have to deal with them a whole lot differently than you're dealing with a regular criminal who might be trying to physically rough somebody up to take their money. So you have, and this is all part in the martial art training, knowing when to use force, how much force to use, right? And again, there are all kinds of passages in the Bible that back this up. So while I respect the Quakers and the Amish and the Mennonites and the Hutterites and the Jehovah's Witnesses, I just disagree that God has called us to be like extreme pacifists. I think we're to be pacifistic in the sense that we shouldn't use force to try to get our way. But if someone's trying to take our life, I believe the Bible tells us we can defend ourselves and at the same time try to do it with compassion.
Yeah, and I like it's contextual, right?
Yes.
And I think a lot of people will say that the situation would turn the other cheek, and they try to blanket that onto all context. And they also talk about personal self-defense and compare it to war, and say, well, war is bad, and okay, sure, war can be bad, but would you necessarily put the same blanket statements? Would you would for nation against nation versus someone breaking into your house, trying to attack your family, or those kind of situations? So I think each one has to be approached with a certain level of respect to what's going on. And it makes me think about back when I was training with you. I remember we were doing grapple holds, and you were going over, depending on how you hold your own arm in this grapple hold, you can either put them unconscious or you can snap their neck. And we had to practice to make sure we were doing the right one because we didn't want to accidentally just go too far.
Yes.
And that was a part of that discipline element, that if you're going to have this knowledge, you also have the responsibility and the care for who you're defending yourself from to practice it.
Right, exactly. And with those chokeholds, just to do a little sidestep with something that's very current right now with the concerns of police brutality. And I'm not going to address it outright, but I just want to talk about the chokeholds. Some of the chokeholds have been banned in different areas, and there's certain reasons. And we have to take this into consideration also when we defend ourselves. As you were saying, when you studied with me, there's a certain way you put chokehold on, it'll just kind of knock them out. There's another way which could kill them. But we have to be careful. This is why some police departments have banned these chokes, is because we don't know the health of the person we're fighting. And we have to take this into consideration as well. Someone may look healthy to us, and we may try to just put them to sleep, but if they've got a heart condition or something else, it could actually still kill them, even though you're not applying the deadlier aspect. So we got to keep that in mind too, and that's why the police ban those in some places, because they realize that not everybody just goes to sleep with them. Sometimes they do die.
Yeah. Okay. Fair. And I think that's obviously very relevant with the situations that happened in the States.
Yes,
and,
absolutely.
So there's a lot there to unpack, and if you have questions or comments, just throw it in the comment section below, and we can address them further out. I just see a warning on my phone popping up that my battery's getting low, so I'm going to pause here, and we'll come back in just a second. Okay, we found a solution to our energy problem, so we're going to just jump right back into it. So last we were kind of talking about was benefits of martial arts, and then how you kind of justify it with the Christian stance. Was there anything else you want to add to either of those 2 points?
Well, sure. And maybe you're already going to ask this question. I mean, we didn't prearrange this or anything. We're just kind of going.
Not too much on here.
So, what I think I'd like to add is that I think that martial arts can be very good for Christians, for any spiritual person, because it helps reduce violence. And it seems kind of odd to say that, since martial means warlike. But if a person studies martial arts and becomes confident, then their false ego shrinks. I mean, the false ego that makes us want to be defensive and aggressive is because we're afraid. And if we get confident that we can defend ourselves in most situations, and even if we can't fully defend ourselves, but we can do enough to escape and get away, and we feel confident that we can do that, then our ego shrinks, the false ego. There's nothing wrong with a good healthy ego, but that kind of false ego thing that gets upset with everybody all the time, that starts to shrink.
Mm-hmm.
Not only that, but when we study martial arts, if we are attacked, we can defend ourselves better, and because of that, we're able to defend ourselves without hurting the other person too much. Again, I mean, if this is a psychopathic killer and they just wiped out half your family, well, you don't have to worry too much about how you deal with that person. But if you're just in some sort of conflict with somebody and they've lost their temper and they start to throw a punch at you or punches at you and you've got to defend yourselves, or just defend yourself, you don't particularly want to hurt this person too much. And so by learning self-defense, we can evade the attack, subdue them a bit. This is one of the nice things about some of the more jiu-jitsu and hapkido styles. You can tie them up and hold them in a hold until they can calm down, or until help can come and you can help get the person subdued. But see, if you don't know martial arts and you panic, you might use something really deadly. You might think of something, think, oh, I'll punch them in the throat or something, and do some major damage, or you might get their arm behind their back and then shove it right up because out of fear of them hitting you again, and you might damage their rotator cuff, they might need surgery. So I just believe that if we're truly a spiritual person, that some sort of self-defense knowledge is really good, so that A, you don't have your ego getting in the way and maybe causing you to get into more conflicts with other people, and B, that if you do get into a physical confrontation, that you have the skill to defend yourself without hurting the other person too badly.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And so where this is kind of taking my brain is, I know recently in not just the United Church, but a few different Christian denominations, they've been starting to experiment with more spiritual body practices like healing touch and Reiki that has to do with moving of energies. Now I know in like Tai Chi, for example, they talk about Qi and the Qigong meditations. There's also Qi energy. And what kind of knowledge of your body can help your spiritual practices as a Christian, I guess is the kind of going with that. Kind of putting them on the spot here.
Yeah, well, I taught Tai Chi for a number of years, decades, and I taught Qigong, which works with energy. And there's a very calming effect working with this energy. We do, as we do some Tai Chi, we become aware of our bodies more, become more at one with them. Matter of fact, there's an old kind of story or theory that the higher advanced you get in Tai Chi, the more clumsy you become, because when you bump into something, you just kind of bounce around it. So you're so good and know where your body is, and you know how to turn and twist and avoid hitting things too hard. You become clumsy because you're not worried about it as much. I don't know if that's true. I'm clumsy, but I just assume I'm clumsy, right? But yeah, I think that those energy things are calming. I know that when I taught Tai Chi, that you could just fall asleep. Once learning Tai Chi is sometimes stressful because you're trying to remember all the moves and when to step and all that. But once you know it, and then you practice it, whether it's to music indoors or to the sounds of nature outside, doesn't matter. It is just so relaxing. Mm-hmm. But it does take, a lot of people quit. Tai Chi is discipline. That's self-discipline, and it helps focus the mind. Mm-hmm. It is something it really does benefit the mind. But I taught Tai Chi for decades, as I said. Very few people went on to learn the whole system. Very few people went on to learn even one long set. I had some people stay with me for 20 some odd years, and those people would be so relaxed in Tai Chi. But again, it's hard to learn.
Yeah. All right. And I guess the last thing I'm kind of thinking of is then these different self-defense techniques or styles, I guess. So karate comes from Japan, kung fu comes from China, and different areas, and they come from different areas out east in the world. Now, how do these things mold into their own spirituality context out there? Because it's not necessarily Christian nations that they're orienting from. What kind of spiritual foundations do they have in their own right?
Well, a lot of the martial arts from the East do have some sort of spiritual background. A lot of the Kung Fu is very Buddhist. There's also a lot of Taoist influence in Kung Fu, some styles. So the Shaolin is Buddhist and the Wudong is Taoist. A lot of people say Wu-Tang, but it's really more like a Wudong sound. Then, of course, the Japanese martial arts, even if the karate did originally come from Okinawa and then from China, there was, once it was in Japan, there was a Bushido influence, which itself was influenced by Confucianism. But even in China, some Kung Fu was influenced by Confucianism.
Okay. So would it be beneficial for someone who is looking to enhance their Christian spirituality to also look at the spirituality of where these forms would come from?
Well, sure. Now, obviously, there's some more fundamentalist and charismatic Christians who don't care for Eastern religions. They think that it's in conflict. And certainly, there are some things in Buddhism that do conflict with Christian teachings. But the meditation techniques that the Buddhists developed are great. Now, here's the thing. The Buddhists have a different cosmic view than we Christians do. So we have our view is more like Confucianism. Confucianism has a very positive look at life, and so does Christianity. Sure, there's sin in the world, and in Buddhism, we make mistakes in Confucianism, talk about the mistakes you can make. But in Buddhism, there's in my opinion, kind of a negative view of life, and I don't mean that in a pejorative sense. I'm not trying to put down Buddhism. I love Buddhism. It's a great religion. But it can conflict with our own understanding, right? So some Christians may not want to deal with that, but the positive thing that came from the Buddhist view, with this view that life is kind of negative, is suffering, pain and suffering. I mean, dukkha is suffering in Buddhism. That's the term that they use. And I think one of the phrases they use is subbantakam, or I might not be pronouncing that exactly right, but it basically means all life is suffering.
Mm-hmm.
And because the Buddhists have this idea that life is suffering, they developed many meditation techniques to deal with suffering. And so that's why a lot of medical places will use mindfulness meditation to help people deal with things. Now, there's other meditations that we have in Christianity that deal with other things better than Buddhism does. Okay, we have some amazing meditation techniques in Christianity. Some of them were forgotten for a long time and have been revived. So those are good. But yeah, if somebody is a Christian and they're having issues with chronic pain, talk to their doctor. Doctor might recommend some of these Buddhist things. And certainly, even if you just want to use it for your own help, just with stress, you can just do these martial arts and learn some of the concepts that come with them.
Yeah, so I think what I'm also hearing is that the nice thing about martial arts is it's bridging a lot of these worlds together. You have this physical world, you have the spiritual world, you have this mindful world, you have this almost medical healing thing. It's kind of connecting it on a lot of bridges. And martial arts isn't just an Eastern thing. Like I know you also did stuff from European culture as well.
Yep.
Maybe tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's important. Like we have boxing in the West, Greco-Roman wrestling. It's really not Greco-Roman, it's French, but they thought that's what the Greco-Romans would have done. So we have this, French wrestling, we have British boxing, and then we have the savate, which was kind of a blend of that together with some kicking from the Orient that the sailors picked up when they were traveling. We also had some ancient martial arts. Matter of fact, boxing was much more self-defense oriented many, many years ago. We had all these European martial arts, but with Christianity, one of the things we did that was kind of wrong is we basically neutered our martial arts, and then the church didn't want this violent stuff done. And it's really kind of interesting because we turned all our martial arts into sports. took out all the deadly stuff. And then during the 1800s, when they wanted to kind of revive martial arts, and especially when the muscular Christianity stuff developed, we had to bring over Japanese jiu-jitsu guys to help fill in some of the stuff. We had it before. I mean, we've got the manuals now. We've got all this stuff that showed that we had all this stuff that the Orient had. But two things. Number one, we got used to gunpowder and stuff, and so now we don't need to use our hands. And number two, the church said, well, this isn't very nice that they'll be practicing these martial arts, so let's turn them into sports. So we did have martial arts at one time in the West too, but we lost some of that, so we had to bring over these Japanese guys and help fill in those gaps that had been created by guns and the church.
Yeah, and I think we're also seeing, you're talking about sports martial arts, like the Krav Maga, and is that the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu as well?
Well, okay, the Krav Maga is Jewish, and it's pretty much
right.
self-defense. Yeah, the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, a very good self-defense system, but it's more used in the MMA, the sports stuff.
Yeah.
But certainly it's a great self-defense system. And of course, then there's the pancration, which was that was a real Greco-Roman martial art that some people have started to revive. I know a fellow that's got a instructor level in that. Yeah.
That's awesome. So I'm going to wrap it up here. I think we're probably hitting about the half-hour mark. So what I'd like to kind of end with is, if there's anybody out there who's watching who may be interested in maybe investigating martial arts or adding it into their weekly routine, what's some styles that you may recommend to someone who's never done it before?
Well, that's a tricky question, really. I really recommend to start off with just more sport oriented, unless it depends on the need. But karate is great for kids. I think karate is great. I'm not sure if they still teach this old school jiu-jitsu where it was kind of like half karate, half jiu-jitsu. They used to do that decades ago. I think now with the MMA, a lot of stuff kind of goes that direction now, which blends them as well, but it's a little different. Kind of hard to explain it. I'd have to show the difference. But you have to take everything into consideration. What a person likes. Certain body types are better for grappling. I was never a strong person. I did both grappling and striking, but I preferred the striking because I could move in and out. And
the speed based, right?
Yeah. If I'd been a little bit stronger, I might have liked the grappling more. I did like the grappling, but just not quite as much. I wrestled in high school and stuff. But
now we do have a lot of seniors in our congregation, so Tai Chi would probably be something that would be good for them as well.
Sure, and if someone's going to get into Tai Chi just to relax mildly with, I'd see if I could find somebody who taught a short Tai Chi set, because the longer ones take a long time. Yeah. But yeah, so if some people, matter of fact, there's a Tai Chi set that was developed for prisoners, which just stands in one position and steps out in different directions because the prisoners use it in their cells.
Okay. Well, that's interesting. Well, excellent. So if you have any questions or comments, feel free to leave them in the comment section below, or you can send us an email at villagesuc@gmail.com. Just want to thank my father, Rev Michael Shaw, for coming out and talking to us about the martial arts. I guess I should have called you Sifu for that one. The martial arts title there. And if you enjoyed this, make sure you like and subscribe. We hope to have more interviews coming out in the future. Take care.